Hello, I'm Francesco Ramozzi.
And I'm Dóra Tolnai.
We are international students at ECHR, and today we're going to discuss a topic that can be interesting for many of us.
As citizens, we have fundamental rights that cannot be violated, and those rights are listed in the European Convention of Human Rights.
Among the most important ones lies the right not to be tortured and physically violated. Those provisions are stated in Article 3 of the Convention. The article states that no one shall be subjected to torture or to inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. And such violation cannot be justified under any circumstance as indicated by the lack of a second paragraph under the article.
But what does it mean specifically? To what extent is this article enforceable? And what fields does it cover?
The question we would like to answer in particular in this video is to what extent is Article 3 ECHR absolute? This is an evaluating research question that we're going to explore in the next few minutes.
As we can see, just in the Netherlands, there were several violations and questionable cases surrounding the provisions of Article 3. There are 48 of such, to be exact.
Torture, degrading treatment, punishment, they're all very general words. It is evident that when someone gets arrested, he cannot be beaten or tortured against, nor can he be subject to inhuman treatment upon conviction. However, this article can be interpreted in a wide array of circumstances. It is important to examine how this legislation can be applied to specific cases.
Let's consider, for example, the case of a convicted person who was in no way tortured by the state during his legal proceedings. However, is deported because upon conviction, he was sentenced to be sent back to his country of origin.
Well, we found that paragraph 45 of the Guide on Case Law of the European Convention of Human Rights regarding immigration clearly states that a state cannot deport a person if the country the person is being sent to is considered a dangerous zone, namely a war zone, or any other area that could threaten his well-being.
This principle is also reflected in Article 19 of Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, which protects against being expelled to a region where one would be subject to the events described in Article 3 of the Convention, namely torture, inhumane or degrading treatment, or punishment.
In the case of Al Sadan and Mufti versus the United Kingdom, we can find a great example of these legislations. Section number 123 reports, the court further reiterates that expulsion by a contracting state may give rise to an issue under Article 3 and hence engage the responsibility of that state under the Convention, where substantial grounds have been shown for believing that the person concerned, if deported, faces a real risk of being subjected to treatment contrary to Article 3. In such a case, Article 3 implies an obligation not to deport the person in question to that country.
So a state cannot physically violate a person directly nor indirectly, and Article 3 can be invoked in a wide array of cases. To illustrate how absolute this article is, a person cannot even be deported to a country considered a safe zone otherwise if the country in question lacks the medical means to continue therapy of the deported person that he was undergoing.
Even though in theory, in no instance can inhuman or degrading treatment can be justified under Article 3, some cases pose exceptions from this rule. In the case of Calaifa and others versus Italy, the three applicants, who were economic migrants from Tunisia, found themselves in confinement on board two ships in Palermo after their original temporary placement in the migration reception center. They complained that this treatment violated their rights under Article 3.
The government argued that the humanitarian crisis brought by the particular immigration emergency situation in Italy had to be taken into account when assessing the case. The court answered that even if Article 3 was to be interpreted in a general and absolute way, the conditions in which the state had to operate in this crisis situation were important to bear in mind in order to carry out the final verdict. The court concluded in this case that there was no violation of Article 3.
So it is interesting to see that even though the treatment the three immigrants had suffered was not in line with the provision of Article 3, The court, considering Italy's argumentations, held that there was no violation of that article. So, in conclusion, the provisions of Article 3 include some of the most absolute and inviolable human rights, but these can still be subject to external circumstances in special cases.
This doesn't mean that there is any sufficient legal justification for the breach of the article, but the court has the power to decide whether in a given circumstances the state constitutes a violation of Article 3 or not.